The email arrived at 3:07 a.m. Its subject line a simple, sterile notification. Your genetic ancestry results are ready. Sarah clicked, the mechanical sound of the mouse echoing in the oppressive stillness of the night. The webpage loaded, a colorful infographic of twisting DNA helixes. Her eyes scanned past percentages and regional maps, searching for the familiar. Then she found it. The shared matches list, a name. His name, Mark, listed not under close family or extended family, but under a category that made the room tilt. The air in her office grew thick and stale, carrying the faint, metallic scent of the old radiator. Her throat tightened. She read the explanatory note beside the category, each word a physical weight pressing down on her chest. This match indicates you share approximately 50% of your DNA, a genetic relationship of parent, child, or full sibling. Her husband, Mark, the father of her sleeping child down the hall. The math did not lie, but it whispered a truth so monstrous her mind recoiled. The realization did not arrive with a scream, but with a suffocating vacuum of silence, as the foundation of her life, her love, her very identity, dissolved into a biological impossibility. This isn't a story about a lab error. This is a story about the lie my mother took to her grave, and the truth I had to unearth myself. Video. Montage. Happy, sun-drenched photos of Sarah and her husband, Mark. The air in our home grew heavy with the scent of old paper and secrets. A sun-bleached wedding photo on a California beach. Mark cradles newborn Lily, his smile bright, a later memory. Sarah and her mother, Eleanor, share coffee in their Portland kitchen, the air smelling of roasted beans and cinnamon. My name is Sarah Miller. I met Mark 5 years ago at a tech conference in Seattle. It was instant. He was kind, funny, solid as a rock. He proposed on the Oregon coast, the roar of the Pacific, our only witness. We built a life in Portland that felt like a perfect, fragile dream. My mother, Eleanor, adored him. A fact that, in hindsight, feels like the first whisper of wrongness. You finally found your person, she'd whisper, her voice carrying the warmth that anchored our family. My best friend, an artist with an eccentric soul, was the very heart of our home. The air in the room grew heavy, thick with the scent of drying paint, and something faintly metallic. In that quiet moment, a primal dread took hold, whispering that this simple act was the first stitch in a tapestry we couldn't yet see. A HeritageDNA kit sat on the table, its cheerful packaging stark against the dark wood. Last Christmas, as a joke, we all did those tests. Mom, me, Mark. Mark laughed about finding secret royalty. But Mom, she just went quiet. Her silence wasn't thoughtful. It was a cold, heavy stillness that swallowed the room. She'd brush it off with a promise to handle it later. A promise she'd never keep. 6 months ago, the silence of an empty house settled in for good, after ovarian cancer took her. Her absence happened in a blur, leaving me unmoored in my grief. I craved an anchor, something to tether me back to solid ground. So with a hollow ache in my chest, I finally opened the storage box containing our old film development kits. The air in the room grew thick with the scent of aged chemicals and forgotten paper. The screen fractured into two realities. On one side, Sarah's fragile optimism. On the other, the relentless crawl of a digital progress bar. It inched forward, pixel by pixel, filling the void. Her expression locked solid. Sarah's voiceover cut through the silence, clinical and detached. Mark's results came first, then mine. The website had a feature, Find Close Family. And there it was, at the top of my list. Predicted relationship. Husband. Right below it, in sterile, algorithmic text, the cold truth. Estimated genetic relationship. 25% shared DNA. The piano melody warped and slowed, sinking into a deep, unsettling drone that seemed to thicken the air. Sarah, pale as moonlight, confronted Mark in their living room, the only light coming from a street lamp outside. Mark paced the floor, hands raking through his hair, the scent of ozone and old dust hanging in the room. His voice cracked with disbelief. That's impossible, Sarah. My parents are from Ohio. Your mom was from Maine. The test is wrong. It has to be. Sarah's voice trembled, thick with a horror that made the air feel heavy and cold. The test says you share 25% of my DNA, Mark. A sticky silence descended, broken only by the frantic, wet sound of their own breathing. A parent shares 50%, a sibling shares 50%, an uncle shares 25%. The science doesn't lie. But someone did know. My mother was an only child, or so she claimed. Orphaned young, raised by that rigid grandmother. Every time family history surfaced, her smile would tighten, her gaze growing distant. She never spoke of her parents, insisting the past was a phantom best left unfed. Her warnings hung in the air, a damp, metallic scent clinging to her words. I ignored her, and began to offer scraps to that ghost anyway. In the quiet that followed, a sticky, organic sound began to whisper from the walls. Sarah's fingers traced the brittle microfiche in the dim library light, the faint scent of old paper and dust hanging in the air.
She cross-referenced the faded records with online obituary archives, the only sound the low hum of the computer and the occasional tap of a key. Her eyes fixed on a map of Boston, tracing a neighborhood that felt unnervingly familiar. Then, her breath caught.
A whisper escaped her lips. Eleanor Grace Parker, born in Boston. Her mother's name was Margaret Parker. The father's identity remained a void, an unsettling blank space in the family record. But then, a document surfaced. A marriage license for Margaret Parker and a man named Robert Henderson. The document revealed they had a son, named Robert Henderson Jr. I was born 2 years before my mother. Video. Sarah prints a grainy newspaper photo, a Little League team. She circles a boy's face. The caption reads, Bobby Henderson, Sarah. I had a half-uncle. My mother never, ever spoke of Bobby Henderson, her own half-brother. His name was a void in our family history, an omission that felt deliberate and heavy. The scent of old paper and dust filled the air as I finally tracked down a phone number, my fingers trembling over the digits. A deep, unsettling quiet settled in the room, broken only by the faint, rhythmic drip of a leaky faucet from somewhere down the hall. My finger hovered over the call button, trembling in the stale air. I had found him. Robert Bobby Henderson, retired and living in Florida. A cold, metallic taste filled my mouth. My hands were blocks of ice as I finally pressed the button to connect the call. Then, the audio recording began to play. My own voice, tinny and distant on the recording. Mr. The air in the room grew heavy, thick with the scent of dust and forgotten years. Sarah's voice was a fragile thing, breaking the quiet with her hesitant claim. Bobby's wary reply was a dry whisper. The name, Ellie, hanging in the stagnant air like a ghost. The stranger's eyes widened, his words catching in his throat. You're Ellie's girl? Who? He breathed, the air tasting of damp earth and old grief. My God, is she? He managed, his voice a raw whisper. Sarah's reply was a flat, heavy stone dropped into the silence. She passed, she said, the finality of it clinging to the cold, still air. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to understand our family. The air in the room grew thick, heavy with the scent of damp wood and something faintly metallic. Bobby's voice was flat, emotionless, carrying a finality that made the space between them feel cold and empty. There's not much to understand, he said. My dad married her mom. The aftermath was a jagged wound. Ellie despised us, and she loathed the constant, painful reminder we represented. Her hatred was a palpable presence, thick as the dust in the abandoned rooms. The moment the law allowed it, on her 18th birthday, she vanished into the waiting night. She changed her name back to Parker, or so I heard, and we never saw her again after that. I always wondered, in the quiet moments, if she ever had children. Sarah's voice grew thin, strained with a sudden, sharp anxiety. Did she keep in touch with anyone from back then? The boyfriend? Bobby mentioned a man from a wealthy northern family. His voice dropped to a whisper, laced with something unspoken. The air in the room turned frigid, carrying the faint scent of old paper and dust. This wasn't just a story about money or status. It was the beginning of something darker. A scandal erupted, shattering their world. She fell pregnant, a secret too heavy to bear. The family paid her off in cold, crisp bills, forcing her to sign away her future. They made her leave town, her departure marked only by the scent of rain on damp paper. The boy was shipped off to a distant military school, his fate sealed with the metallic click of a lock. The incident was buried. The infant, they compelled her to surrender it, a sealed adoption. It shattered her. That's why she fled, why she never glanced back. The relentless tick of a clock dissolved into the faint, irregular thump of a single heartbeat. Then, barely a whisper, Sarah's voice cut through the stillness. Her words were a cold, damp breath against the ear. A baby. A son. Sarah's hands trembled as she pulled the yellowed adoption papers from the drawer, the scent of old ink and dust filling the room. Her breath caught in her throat when she saw the date. 1974. The air grew thick with the metallic tang of ozone, like the moment before a storm breaks. Each ragged breath she took felt like swallowing shards of glass as the truth settled in. Mark entered this world in New Hampshire, back in 1974. His future parents, a couple from Ohio, found him through a private, closed adoption agency. The paperwork was final, the records sealed shut. A transaction completed, with no receipt and no returns. Adopted. The climax. Sarah drives through the iron gates of the secluded New Hampshire cemetery, the sky a blooming slate. She walks a gravel path with grim purpose, a single white rose clutched in her hand, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and decay. Bobby Henderson had given her one final, crucial piece of information. Now, surrounded by the silence, watching dead, she moved toward the truth, each step heavier than the last. After the scandal broke, the boy's family retreated into shadow. It was the grandfather who acted, purchasing a plot in the local cemetery. The air there carried the scent of damp earth and old stone. It was a quiet, final gesture that spoke louder than any accusation. He whispered to my father, a plot for the shame, to bury it. I was lost. The meeting remained a locked door until I finally stood before the grave. A scent of wet stone and cold iron hung in the still air. In that moment, the cryptic words crystallized into a terrible, solid truth. The camera settled on the headstone, its inscription stark in the moonlight. It was my grandmother's grave, the one my mother claimed she never knew. A damp, Earthy scent of decay clung to the still air as the implications settled. The grave she claimed was lost, yet she'd visited it for decades. The camera moves to the right, revealing another plot beside Margaret's. Sarah's voice drops to a whisper as we focus on the second stone. The inscription reads, "Baby Boy Parker." The air grows thick with the scent of damp earth and forgotten grief. April 1974. A love silenced. The wind's lonely howl was the only sound. The music of the story gone. Sarah's broken whisper cut through the quiet. A headstone for a baby who didn't die. A monument purchased by a wealthy grandfather. Not to mark a death, but to seal a secret. A closed adoption, buried in stone. He made the problem vanish, allowing his grandson, my mother's son, to be reborn into another family, free from any history. Sarah. My mother never lied about having a child. Her lie was about his death. She let her own father, my daughter's great-grandfather, bury the truth beneath a false grave marker. The damp earth swallowing their secrets for 4 decades. 40 years later, his grandson, my own half-brother, walked into a Seattle conference room, and fate drew us together. He fell in love with her. A connection forged in ignorance of the rot festering in our shared bloodline. Now, back in the stark, cold Portland living room, Sarah and I sit on opposite sofas, the weight of that buried truth pressing down like a tombstone. The DNA report sat between them on the coffee table, a silent explosive waiting to detonate. Mark's eyes were empty wells. So my biological mother was your mother? Sarah nodded. Her tears dried to a chilling vacancy. You're the baby from the grave. The secret she mourned at that stone every year, while she smiled at you across our dinner table. Mark's voice was a low rasp, thick with a dread that seemed to cling to the damp air. Our daughter, Lily, she's... Sarah cut in, her tone sharp with a defensive, almost metallic edge. She's our daughter. A heavy pause filled the space, thick with the scent of old paper and cold coffee. And she is my niece. The final word hung there. A confession that turned the familiar room alien and charged the silence with a terrible, unspoken weight. The product of a union between half-siblings. The lie wasn't in the test tube. It was carved in stone. Our mother's grief was a performance, concealing a secret far more terrible. She loved us both with a ferocity that made her believe she could outrun our family's genetic curse. She thought she could bury her first son and raise her daughter, keeping those two worlds from ever colliding. We've seen lawyers. The genetic counselors delivered their verdict, and with it, the marriage was legally void and annulled by decree. Mark has since moved out, leaving behind only the faint, lingering scent of ozone and the cold, damp air that now fills the empty spaces. In the stillness, a sticky residue clings to forgotten surfaces, and the only sound is the distant, rhythmic scratching of something unseen. The air grows heavy with a primal dread, as if the very walls whisper of secrets too terrible to speak aloud. We share custody of Lily in a way that no parenting book could ever prepare you for. We are co-parents, we are family, but we are not, and can never be, husband and wife. My mother now rests between the mother she mourned and the son she was compelled to declare deceased. Her entire existence was a liminal space, a purgatory between a buried truth and a living lie. And in the quiet soil, that same unsettling duality has become our inheritance. What do you do when the person you loved most in the world built your life on a lie? And what do you do when that lie is the only thing left of them you have? The air grows heavy with the scent of damp earth and forgotten promises. Every cherished memory now feels like a fragile, crumbling artifact.
Like the journey? Subscribe and join the next expedition.